I'm Colonel Avery Emmerich, 40 years old, and I built my career from a small ROTC scholarship all the way to leading joint tasking teams overseas. For years, I showed up for my family, covering bills, helping them move, babysitting, stepping in whenever they needed me. But when my brother-in-law mocked my service and belittled me at the range in front of his friends, I chose to draw a line I should have set years ago. If you've ever been minimized, dismissed, or talked down to by someone you supported, you're in good company. Tell me your story in the comments. Trust me, you're not the only one. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to defend your dignity after being underestimated, hit like and subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, respect, and taking back your voice. What happened next caught everyone off guard. I grew up middle class in Colorado Springs, close enough to the Air Force Academy that I could see the chapel from my high school parking lot. My younger sister Leah and I were tight back then, closer than most siblings, I think. She was the dreamer, I was the planner. When she got overwhelmed with chemistry homework, I'd stay up helping her. When she wanted to sneak out to meet friends, I'd cover. When our parents fought about money, I'd take her to the park until things calmed down. I didn't think of it as being her protector. It was just what older sisters did. I joined the Air Force at 22 through ROTC, commissioned as a second lieutenant. Leah cried at my commissioning ceremony, proud and a little scared. I promised her I'd always be there when she needed me, deployment schedules permitting. And I kept that promise. When she married Jason Rivers at 28, I was her maid of honor. Jason was charismatic in that outdoor enthusiast way, always talking about hiking trails or his latest camping gear. He had an easy smile and a firm handshake, the kind of guy who called everyone brother or man within 5 minutes of meeting them. He seemed good for Leah, and that was enough for me. I helped them move into their first apartment, spending a weekend hauling boxes up 3 flights of stairs. When Jason's truck broke down 6 months later, I co-signed for a newer vehicle because their credit wasn't there yet. Leah called me crying one semester about tuition, something about a grant falling through, and I covered it. $3,200. She promised to pay me back, but I told her not to worry about it. When their first child arrived, a daughter they named Emma, I flew home whenever I was stateside to babysit. Jason would clap me on the shoulder and say things like, "You're a lifesaver, sis. Don't know what we'd do without you." He admired that I was in the military, but in a distant sort of way. He'd introduce me to his friends as my sister-in-law, she's in the Air Force, with a tone that suggested mild novelty, like I collected stamps or ran marathons. He'd joke about my chair force job, laughing as if we were sharing an inside joke, though I'd never laughed along. I didn't bother correcting him about my actual specialty. It wasn't worth the effort, and honestly, I didn't need him to understand what I did. My work spoke for itself to the people who mattered. I made captain at 29, then major at 34. By then I'd been through multiple deployments, worked joint operations, earned qualifications that weren't listed on any public resume. But Jason's perception of me never shifted. He still talked to me like I was Leah's kid sister playing dress-up in a uniform. At family dinners, he'd dominate conversations about tactical, this, or operational, that, terms he'd picked up from YouTube channels and online forums. I'd nod politely, let him talk. Leah seemed happy, and that mattered more than my ego. The imbalance crept in slowly. I gave time, money, presents. They took, not maliciously, but consistently. Jason never offered to pay me back for the tuition or the car cosign. When I'd visit, I'd end up covering dinners because Jason would pat his pockets and say, left my wallet in the truck. Small things. Ignorable things. I told myself it was just family dynamics, nothing worth addressing. They had a kid and a mortgage. I had a steady paycheck and no dependents. It made sense for me to help. When I made lieutenant colonel at 36, Jason congratulated me with a question. Does that actually mean anything in the field, or is it just administrative? I smiled and said something vague about increased responsibilities. Leah laughed, not unkindly, but in a way that suggested she agreed with his assessment. That stung more than I expected. I excused myself early that night, claiming an early morning flight. In my car, I sat for a few minutes before starting the engine, wondering when exactly I'd become the family ATM who also happened to wear a uniform. But I didn't pull back. I kept showing up, kept helping. When their hot water heater died, I sent money. When Emma needed braces, I contributed. When Jason wanted to take Leah on an anniversary trip, I flew in to watch Emma for the week. I told myself this was what love looked like, showing up, being reliable, asking nothing in return. And maybe it was. But something had shifted in how they saw me, or maybe how I saw myself in their eyes. I wasn't Avery anymore, the competent officer with a career I'd built through sweat and sacrifice. I was just the convenient sister with a steady income and no life of her own. Jason's new hobby started about a year before everything came apart. He discovered the civilian tactical community, a mix of serious hobbyists, former military, and wannabe operators with more money than sense. He started attending weekend courses with names like Advanced Urban Combat and Low-Light Engagement Tactics. He bought his first custom rifle, then a second, then a third. Night vision optics. Plate carriers. Helmets with rail systems for mounting accessories I wasn't sure he knew how to use. His social media filled with photos of him in full kit at private ranges, posed like he was about to breach a door. The captions were always variations on the same theme: training never stops, or stay ready, or practically tier 1. That last one he used as a joke, except it wasn't really a joke. You could tell he half believed it. His friends would comment with flame emojis and beast mode, and operator AF, and Jason would respond with knowing emojis, like they were all in on some secret the rest of the world couldn't understand. He started using terminology he didn't fully grasp. Terminal ballistics. CQB flow. NVG qualified. He dropped these terms at family gatherings, waiting for someone to ask what they meant so he could explain in painstaking detail. I never asked. I knew what they meant, and I knew he was using them wrong half the time, but correcting him felt petty. Let him have his hobby. It wasn't hurting anyone. Except it was changing how he saw me. The more he invested in his tactical persona, the more dismissive he became of my actual experience. At a barbecue that summer, someone asked about my job. Before I could answer, Jason jumped in. She doesn't really run guns at work, right? I mean, the Air Force is more about logistics and support stuff. Not like she's kicking in doors. He said it with absolute confidence, and Leah nodded along, like this was an established fact we all agreed on. I could have corrected him. I could have explained that my job involved things he'd never be cleared to know about, working alongside people whose names would never appear in any public database. But I didn't. I just smiled and changed the subject. What would be the point? He'd made up his mind about who I was and what I did. Facts wouldn't change that. When I made Lieutenant Colonel, he asked if that actually means anything in the field. When I mentioned qualifying on new weapon systems, he said, "Yeah, but you're talking about like basic qualification stuff, right? Not actual combat drills." When I came home from a 3-month deployment looking leaner and tired, he said I should try his workout program, that it'd really get me in shape. Leah laughed. I didn't. The breaking point came on a Saturday in October. Jason had been planning this range day for weeks, inviting his tactical buddies and insisting it be a family thing. He wanted me there specifically, he said, so I could see what real training looks like. Leah pressured me to come, saying it would mean a lot to Jason, that he really looked up to me and wanted to share his passion. I heard the subtext, just go along with it, don't make waves, let him have this. I agreed. I brought my civilian legal pistol, a Glock 19 I'd bought years ago for personal carry. Nothing fancy, nothing tactical. Just a reliable handgun. I left my issued kit locked in my apartment, where it belonged. This was supposed to be a casual family outing, not a pissing contest. I should have known better. Jason held court from the moment I arrived. His friends Tyler, Colt, and Dan formed an audience as he displayed his rifle like a museum curator presenting a priceless artifact. Custom-built upper receiver. Thermal optic. IR laser module. Suppressor. Adjustable gas block. He listed specifications I hadn't asked for, his voice carrying across the range. This whole setup ran me about $10,000, he announced. But when you're serious about training, you invest in quality. Then he looked at my Glock, still in its case. Nice pea shooter, sis. His friends chuckled. Guess the Air Force doesn't spring for the good stuff, huh? I smiled. Didn't respond. Just started setting up my lane. Jason wasn't done. He loaded a magazine with theatrical precision, narrating each step for his audience. See, most people don't understand the importance of consistency in your loading technique. Pressure on the back of the round, smooth insertion, check for seating. He fired a group at 25 yards, decent shooting, nothing special, and turned to his friends for validation. They obliged with compliments. Then he called down the line to me. You know, sis, if you train more like I do, maybe you'd actually get some real qualifications under your belt. Not just whatever box checking the Air Force makes you do once a year. Tyler asked what my rank was. I opened my mouth to answer. Jason cut me off. She's some mid-level officer. Paperwork, logistics, nothing tactical. Right, sis? That was the moment. Not anger. I'd felt anger before and knew how to control it. This was something colder. Detachment. Like a switch flipping. I saw Jason clearly for the first time. Insecure, performing, desperate for validation he'd never earned. And I saw myself through his eyes, convenient, harmless, irrelevant. I packed my gear without a word. Leah asked if I was okay. I said I was fine, just remembered something I needed to handle. Jason barely noticed me leave. He was too busy explaining the finer points of his optic system to Dan. I drove home in silence, windows down, letting the autumn air clear my head. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done swallowing disrespect. Done pretending his ignorance was harmless. Done making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Work email. My deployment orders for a joint tasking billet had finalized. 8-week turnaround. Full kit issue next month. I'd be supporting special operations elements in a classified theater, working alongside people who actually understood what professionalism looked like. I didn't tell my family. Not yet. Let Jason enjoy his range days and his online persona. Let him keep pretending he understood the difference between hobbyist and professional. He'd find out soon enough. I met Senior Master Sergeant Elias Hale at the on-base gym 2 days later. Hale and I went back years. He'd been my senior enlisted advisor through 2 deployments and more headaches than I cared to count. He had a way of reading people, cutting through noise to find the truth underneath. When he saw me hitting the heavy bag with more force than usual, he knew something was wrong. Ma'am, he said after I'd finished my set, you gonna tell me what's eating you, or do I have to guess? I told him about the range. Not dramatically, just the facts. Hale listened without interrupting, his expression neutral. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Ma'am, you don't owe civilians explanations, he finally said. The mission sees your worth. They don't have to. It's not about them seeing my worth, Hale. It's about basic respect. Respect from people who don't understand what you do? That's a fool's errand, ma'am. You know that. I did know that. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally were different things. I'd spent years giving to Leah and Jason. Not because I expected gratitude, I didn't. But I'd expected respect. Basic human respect. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped receiving even that. Hale shifted topics. Heard your deployment orders came through. Joint tasking. Yeah, SF support. Full kit issue starts next month. He nodded slowly. That's a different world from what your brother-in-law's playing at. I know. Does he? No. And I'm not sure it matters. It might, Hale said. Sometimes people need to see the gap between fantasy and reality. Not to humiliate them. Just to establish truth. I thought about that for a long time after we parted ways. I wasn't interested in revenge or humiliation. But truth? Truth seemed fair. Jason wanted to compare gear, to measure capabilities, to establish hierarchies. Fine. Let him see where he actually stood. Over the next few weeks, I processed for deployment. Medical screenings. Security briefings. Kit issue. The 18 Malawian kwaches came first, carbine length, SOP mod package, everything I needed for close work. Then the optics, panoramic night vision, dual tube, generation 3. IR laser. Illuminator. Comms headset integrated with hearing protection. Plate carrier actually rated for rifle threats, not the airsoft-grade stuff Jason wore for photos. I didn't post about it. Didn't mention it. Just logged the serial numbers, signed the hand receipts, and stored everything according to regulations. Leah called during this period, cheerful and oblivious. Jason's planning another range day. He really wants you to come. I think he feels bad about last time. Does he? Well, he didn't say that exactly. But he wants you there. It would mean a lot. I could have declined. Should have, probably. But some part of me needed to close this loop. Not for Jason's sake. For mine. I'll be there, I said. Really? That's great. Jason will be so happy. He's got some new upgrades he's excited to show off. I bet he does, I thought. What time? 10:00 hours Saturday. Same range as before. I'll be there. I hung up and looked at my deployment bag, locked and sealed according to regulations. I'd bring it. Not to show off. Not to humiliate. Just to establish truth. Jason wanted to play in a world he didn't understand. Fine. Let him see what that world actually looked like. The days leading up to Saturday were routine. PT at 05:30. Briefings at 0800. Administrative work that never seemed to end. I ran into Captain Jordan Marks at the Operations Center, a colleague I'd worked with on previous taskings. She'd heard about my upcoming deployment. SF support, she said. That's serious business, ma'am. It's the mission. Your family know what you're walking into? They know I'm deploying. They don't need to know more than that. She nodded, understanding. We both knew the deal. Operational security wasn't just about protecting classified information. It was about protecting the people who didn't have clearances from the weight of knowledge they couldn't carry. But there was a difference between protecting people from classified details and letting them disrespect what you did. I was done with the latter. Saturday arrived clear and cold. I loaded my deployment bag into my truck, locked hard case, nothing visible from outside. I wore civilian clothes, jeans, boots, a simple jacket. No rank, no insignia, nothing that advertised my profession. Just another person heading to the range. Jason's truck was already there when I arrived, along with 3 others I recognized from last time. Tyler, Colt, and Dan stood around Jason's tailgate like disciples at an altar. Jason was holding court again, this time about his latest acquisition. So I upgraded the thermal, he was saying as I approached. Got the new floor model. Civilian legal, obviously, but same tech the military uses. Well, almost the same. Close enough that it doesn't matter. He saw me and grinned. Sis, you made it. Thought maybe you'd bail again. I said I'd be here. Good, good. Hey, you bring that Glock again? Because I've got some drills we can run, really help you improve your fundamentals. I didn't answer. Just set my hard case on the bench, still locked. Jason continued his presentation. So yeah, this whole setup now, we're talking close to 10 grand. Maybe more if you count the ammunition I've put through it for training. But that's what separates serious practitioners from weekend plinkers, you know? Investment. Commitment. Tyler asked some technical question about barrel length. Jason answered with confidence that exceeded his knowledge. I tuned it out, checking my phone for any last-minute work emails. Nothing urgent. You listening, sis? Jason called over. This is good stuff. Might learn something. I looked up. I'm listening. Cool. So anyway, terminal ballistics on this round, he continued. I let him. His friends hung on every word, occasionally glancing at their own rifles with what looked like inadequate equipment anxiety. This was Jason's element, performing expertise for an audience that couldn't fact-check him. After about 15 minutes of this, he finally turned his attention to me directly. So what did you bring today? Please tell me you upgraded from that pea shooter. I stood up, walked to my hard case, and unlocked it. The foam interior held my issued kit, everything properly secured. I didn't remove anything yet. Just opened the case so the contents were visible. Jason stepped closer, curious. Then he stopped. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to something like recognition. What system is that? I lifted the 18 Malawian Quachas out carefully, chamber flagged per range rules, magazine well empty. Government issued. Not for civilian purchase. The range went quiet. Not completely. There were other shooters down the line, but our immediate area fell silent. Jason stared at the carbine like he was trying to reconcile two incompatible realities. That's an actual 18 Malawian kwachas. Yes. With the SOP mod package. Yes. He looked back into the case. The panoramic night vision sat in its own cutout, unmistakable in its configuration. The IR laser. The comms headset. All of it genuine, all of it issued, none of it available to civilians at any price. Tyler stepped closer, his voice quieter. Is that PVS 31s? Panoramic NVGs. Yes. Those are restricted to military issue. Yes. Jason's face had gone through several shades of pale. His friends exchanged glances. Colt, who'd been filming earlier for Jason's social media, had lowered his phone. I didn't know you. Jason trailed off. Started again. I didn't know you worked with that level of gear. You never asked. That landed hard. I could see it in his face, the realization that he'd spent months telling me what I did and didn't know, what I was and wasn't capable of, without ever actually asking. He'd constructed an entire narrative about my career based on assumptions and stereotypes, and that narrative was crumbling. I set the 18 Malawian kwachas down carefully, still chamber flagged. This isn't about gear, Jason. Then what's it about? Respect. The word hung there. Simple. Undeniable. Leah had appeared from somewhere. I hadn't noticed her arrival. She stood at the edge of our group, staring at the kit with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, maybe. Embarrassment. She'd never asked what I did either. Just accepted Jason's version, laughed along with his jokes, treated my career like an administrative inconvenience that occasionally took me away from babysitting duties. Jason tried to recover. Look, I didn't mean. I thought. You thought I pushed paper. You thought I wasn't tactical. You thought my qualifications were box-checking exercises. I kept my voice level professional. You've told me that in various ways for years. You've told other people that. You've made jokes about it at family dinners, on your social media, at this range last month. You were disrespectful. To me, to my service, to my profession. Dan shifted uncomfortably. Tyler had taken several steps back, suddenly very interested in his own rifle case. Colt had put his phone away completely. These men understood hierarchy, even if only in a theoretical sense. They understood that something had fundamentally shifted. Jason's voice came out smaller. I didn't know. You could have asked. Would you have told me? If you'd asked respectfully? Yes. But you didn't want to know. You wanted to assume. For the first time in years, Jason had nothing to say. He stood there, expensive rifle hanging from its sling, surrounded by the gear he'd spent thousands of dollars acquiring, and none of it mattered. The gap between us wasn't about equipment or money or even training. It was about experience, responsibility, and the weight of real consequences. Leah finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Avery, I'm sorry. I didn't. I looked at my sister. Saw the embarrassment in her face, the dawning awareness of how she'd participated in Jason's narrative about me. How she'd minimized my career, laughed at his jokes, treated my service as something less than it was. I know, I said quietly. But that's the problem. You didn't know because you never wanted to. I packed my kit back into the case, locked it, and carried it to my truck. Behind me, I heard low conversation. Jason's friends asking questions he couldn't answer, Leah saying something I didn't catch. I didn't look back. I'd said what needed to be said. The rest was up to them. On the drive home, I felt lighter. Not triumphant. Not satisfied in any petty way. Just unburdened. I'd carried their disrespect for years, telling myself it didn't matter, that family was family, that small slights weren't worth addressing. But those small slights had accumulated into something heavier, something that had made me feel invisible in my own family. Now they'd seen me. Really seen me. And there was no going back from that. The weeks following the range were quiet. Jason didn't call. Leah sent a few tentative text messages, generic check-ins that felt more like testing the waters than genuine conversation. I responded politely but didn't elaborate. I was busy with pre-deployment preparations anyway, and I'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply occupy space without apology. Hale noticed the change in me during a planning session. You seem different, ma'am. Good different. Just focused on the mission, senior. Uh-huh. That family situation resolve itself. In a manner of speaking. He smiled slightly. Sometimes people need to see truth instead of hearing it. Sometimes they do. 3 weeks before my deployment, Leah called. Not a text this time, an actual phone call. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hey, she said. Can we talk? We're talking now. I mean in person. I could drive up, or you could come here, or we could meet somewhere neutral. Neutral. Like we were negotiating a treaty. Maybe we were. Coffee, I said. That place off Powers Boulevard. Tomorrow at 1400 hours. 2 p.m. Got it. I'll be there. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. She looked tired. Older than I remembered, though it had only been a few weeks. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I sat down. You asked. I'm here. She took a breath, gathering herself. Jason and I have been talking. A lot. About everything. I waited. Didn't help her. This was her conversation to have. He's embarrassed, she continued. About the range. About how he's treated you. About all of it. He should be. Yeah, he knows that now. He wants to apologize, but he's afraid you won't listen. I'm listening now. I know. But he thinks you hate him. I considered that. I don't hate him, Leah. I'm just done being disrespected by him. She nodded slowly. I get that. And I'm not asking you to forgive him or pretend it didn't happen. I'm trying to understand how we got here. You got here by participating in it. Her face flushed. I know. I know I laughed at his jokes. I know I didn't defend you. I know I treated your career like it was less important than it is. Why? I don't know. Honestly. Maybe because it was easier than challenging him. Maybe because I didn't understand what you actually did. Maybe because... She trailed off. I waited. Maybe because part of me was jealous, she finished quietly. You've got this incredible career. You've traveled the world. You've done things I can't even imagine. And I'm just home with a kid and a husband who spends our money on toys. There it was. The real issue underneath everything else. Not Jason's ego, though that was part of it. Leah's own insecurity about her choices, her life, her path. Your life isn't less valuable than mine, I said. Different doesn't mean less. I know that intellectually. But when Jason started his whole tactical thing, it felt like he was trying to be more like you. And when he put you down, maybe I went along with it because it made me feel better about my own choices. I'd never considered that angle. It reframed some things, though it didn't excuse them. That's honest, I said. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, Avery. Really sorry. Not just for the range thing, but for years of not seeing you clearly. I drank my coffee thinking. Apologies were easy. Change was hard. The question was whether Leah actually wanted to change or just wanted to feel better about what had happened. What does Jason want? I asked. He wants to apologize too. He's been spiraling a bit, honestly. His friends keep asking him about your gear, about what you do, and he realizes he can't answer. It's making him face some things about himself. Like what? Like maybe he's been playing dress-up with expensive toys instead of actually understanding what service means. That was more self-awareness than I'd expected from Jason. Maybe the shock had actually penetrated. Is he still spending thousands on gear? I asked. Leah's expression darkened. That's actually become a problem. He maxed out a credit card last month buying some new optic system. We had a huge fight about it. He's not handling this well. Handling what? Being wrong. Handling feeling inadequate, I think. He built this whole identity around being a tactical expert, and you shattered it in about 30 seconds. Now he's trying to buy his way back to feeling competent. I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but recognition. I'd seen this before in young officers who'd constructed false competence narratives. When reality intruded, they either adapted or doubled down. Jason was doubling down. That's not my problem to fix, Leah. I know. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm telling you what's happening. We sat in silence for a while. Other customers came and went. A barista called out drink orders. Normal life continuing around us while we tried to navigate this damage. Finally, I spoke. I don't hate Jason. I don't hate you. But I'm done being treated like the family ATM who occasionally wears a uniform. I'm done with the jokes, the assumptions, the disrespect. If Jason wants to apologize, fine. But apologies without changed behavior are just words. I understand. Do you? Because you've apologized before, Leah. For smaller things. And then nothing changed. She winced. You're right. I have a pattern of apologizing and then falling back into old habits. So, what's different this time? This time I saw your face at the range. This time I realized I've been making you feel invisible for years. This time. She paused. This time I'm afraid I've damaged something that can't be repaired. It can be repaired, I said. But not quickly. And not without real change. What does that look like? Respect. Boundaries. No more jokes at my expense. No more assuming my career is less important than Jason's hobbies. No more treating me like a bank with no feelings. Okay. And Jason needs to hear this too. Not from you translating. From me. She nodded. He wants to talk to you. Whenever you're ready. After my deployment. Her eyes widened. You're deploying? When? 5 weeks. It's the tasking I was issued for. How long? 4 to 6 months, depending on mission requirements. Where? Can't tell you that. She absorbed this. Will you be safe? It was the first time she'd asked that question in years. Usually she just said, be careful, in a distracted way, like she was reminding me to drive safely. I'll be as safe as the mission allows, I said. I'm good at my job, Leah. Really good. I work with professionals who know what they're doing. We take care of each other. I believe you. I'm sorry I didn't see that before. I finished my coffee. I need to go. Lots to prepare before I leave. Can we talk before you deploy? Even just once more. Maybe. Let's see how the next few weeks go. She accepted that. We stood, hugged briefly, awkward but genuine, and went our separate ways. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into preparation. Equipment checks. Medical updates. Country briefings. The work consumed me in a good way, focusing my mind on problems I could solve with training and professionalism. Jason sent an email. Long, rambling, clearly written and rewritten multiple times. The core message was apology, genuine sounding, but still self-focused. He talked about feeling inadequate, about projecting his insecurities onto me, about realizing the difference between hobbyist and professional. But he also couldn't resist explaining why he'd acted the way he had, as if understanding his motivations excused the behavior. I replied briefly, apology noted. We'll talk when I'm back. That was all the energy I could spare for Jason's ego crisis. I had a mission to prepare for. Hale checked in regularly, part mentor and part friend. How you feeling about this deployment, ma'am? Good. Ready. It'll be good to work with people who respect competence. Your family situation settle? Working on it. Slowly. That's all you can ask. Some things take time. Some things aren't worth the time. He considered that. True. But family's complicated. Sometimes worth it, sometimes not. Only you can decide which category yours falls into. I thought about that a lot over the final weeks. What did I owe my family? What did they owe me? Where was the line between supporting loved ones and enabling disrespect? I didn't have clean answers. Just a growing clarity that I needed to matter in my own family's eyes, not as a resource, but as a person. The night before my deployment, my phone rang. Leah. I know you're busy, she said. But I wanted to say goodbye properly. And thank you. Thank me for what? For not giving up on us completely. For still being willing to talk after everything. I love you, Leah. That hasn't changed. But love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. I know. And I'm going to do better. We both are. I hope so. Come home safe, okay? That's the plan. And Avery? I'm proud of you. I don't think I've said that enough. I'm proud of what you do, who you are, what you've accomplished. You're incredible. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Thanks, Leah. That means something. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by packed gear and organized chaos. Tomorrow I'd fly to a forward operating base, begin mission briefings, integrate with the team I'd support. The work I'd trained for, prepared for, earned the right to do. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt seen by my family. Really seen. It was a start. The deployment was everything I'd hoped and nothing I could discuss. For months of professional excellence, working alongside people who measured competence in results rather than rhetoric. I came home leaner, sharper, carrying experiences I'd never share at family dinners. Promoted to colonel during the deployment, 06, a rank I'd worked 16 years to earn. The notification came via encrypted email, clinical and matter-of-fact. My team congratulated me with handshakes and quiet nods. That was enough. I returned stateside in late spring, processed through reintegration, took mandatory leave. The first week back I slept, ran, and avoided my phone. The second week I started answering messages. Leah had texted regularly during my deployment. Nothing classified, just sister things. Updates about Emma, funny stories, pictures of her garden. She never asked where I was or what I was doing. That restraint felt like respect. Jason had sent one message, 3 months into my deployment. Hope you're safe. Meant what I said in my email. We'll talk when you're back. I hadn't responded. But I thought about it occasionally, during quiet moments between missions. What would that conversation look like? What did I actually want from Jason? Respect, obviously. But what did that look like in practical terms? 2 weeks after returning, I drove to Colorado Springs. Unannounced, but I knew they'd be home. Leah had mentioned in a text that Emma had a dance recital that weekend, which meant Saturday was family time. Jason answered the door. He looked different, thinner, less polished. His tactical Instagram seemed to have gone quiet. I'd checked out of curiosity. His last post was from 6 months ago, some generic quote about training and discipline. Avery, he said. Stood straighter automatically, old military bearing surfacing. Come in. Please. The house felt different too. Less cluttered, more lived in. Leah appeared from the kitchen, smiled genuinely when she saw me. You're back. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? Wanted to surprise you. Emma ran in, 11 now and growing fast. She hugged me without hesitation, chattering about school and friends and her upcoming recital. Normal kid stuff. Beautiful in its normalcy. After Emma retreated to her room, the three of us sat in the living room. Awkward silence settled. Jason broke it. I owe you an apology. A real one, without excuses. I waited. I was insecure and jealous, and I took that out on you for years. I minimized your career because it made me feel better about my own lack of accomplishment. I disrespected you, and I let Leah disrespect you, and I'm ashamed of that. Better. More self-aware. I nodded. The range thing showed me how badly I deluded myself, he continued. I thought I was some kind of expert because I'd spent money and watched videos and took a few courses. But you've lived it. Actually lived it. And I couldn't even see that because I was too busy performing for an audience that didn't matter. What changed? I asked. After you left, my friends had questions I couldn't answer. About your gear, your job, your experience. And I realized I'd never actually asked you anything real about your career. I just made assumptions and built a narrative that served my ego. And the spending? He looked at Leah. She nodded encouragingly. I maxed out 2 credit cards trying to buy my way back to feeling adequate. Thought if I just got better gear, took more courses, I could close the gap between me and, well, and real professionals. Leah finally made me face reality. I've got about $30,000 in debt from gear I don't need for a skill set I'll never use. Are you getting help? Financial counseling, yeah. And therapy, actually. Turns out I've got some issues with inadequacy and male identity wrapped up in all this. That surprised me. Jason going to therapy seemed unlikely, but here we were. That's good, I said. That takes courage. It takes hitting rock bottom. But yeah, I'm trying. Leah spoke up. I'm in therapy too. Working on boundaries and self-worth. Learning to stop comparing my life to yours. I looked between them, my sister and her husband, both doing hard work to fix something broken. Not for me, necessarily, but for themselves. That mattered. I appreciate the apologies, I said. Both of you. And I can see you're trying. But, Jason prompted. But trust rebuilds slowly. I need to see sustained change, not just good intentions. Fair. And some things are non-negotiable going forward. No jokes about my career. No treating me like a bank. No comparing your hobby to my profession. Respect or nothing. Understood, Jason said. And for what it's worth, I sold most of my gear. Paid down some debt. Kept one rifle for actual recreational shooting, but I'm done pretending I'm something I'm not. That was significant. The gear had been part of his identity. What are you now then? I asked. He smiled ruefully. Just a guy who likes shooting targets on weekends. No delusions of grandeur. No operator fantasies. Just a hobbyist who knows his lane. That's honest. It's all I've got. We talked for another hour. Not about the past, but about the present and future. Emma's school, Leah's new job, Jason's actual work as an accountant, a job he'd barely mentioned before because it didn't fit his tactical persona. Normal family conversation, without performance or pretense. Before I left, Jason asked one more question. Can I come to your promotion ceremony? When you get pinned as colonel officially. I'd already been promoted, but the ceremony was scheduled for next month. You want to? Yeah. I want to see who you actually are in your world. Not as a spectator trying to critique, just as family supporting family. I considered it. Thought about Jason in dress uniform at the ceremony, maybe finally understanding the weight of what I'd earned. You can come, I said. Both of you. Emma too, if she wants. Leah smiled. We'll be there. The promotion ceremony was small and professional. My commander pinned the Eagles, read the citation, said the things commanders say. My team attended hail front and center, beaming with pride. A few colleagues from previous assignments made the trip. And in the back, my family sat quietly. Leah looked proud. Emma looked bored but respectful. Jason looked humbled. He watched the ceremony with an expression I'd never seen on him before, genuine respect, without performance or pretense. Afterward, at the reception, Hale approached my family. You must be the sister, he said to Leah. Ma'am talks about you. Good things, I hope. Family things. Which are usually good things. He shook Jason's hand. Jason, right? Heard you're into shooting sports. Recreationally, yeah. Nothing serious. Good hobby. Keep skills sharp. Hale's tone was perfectly neutral, giving nothing away. But I saw Jason relax, relieved not to be judged. Later, during a quiet moment, Jason pulled me aside. Thank you for letting us come. This was eye-opening. How so? Seeing you in your element, with your people. The way they respect you, the way you carry yourself. It's real in a way my whole tactical thing never was. It's just my job, Jason. No. It's your calling. There's a difference. I had a hobby I confused with an identity. You have a vocation. I didn't disagree. Took you a while to see that. Yeah. I'm a slow learner. But I'm trying. I know. Keep trying. The months that followed were different. Better, mostly. Jason stopped trying to relate to my career through tactical terminology. Instead, he asked actual questions, simple ones, respectful ones. How was work? Was I happy with my new assignment? Did I need anything? Leah rebuilt our relationship brick by brick. No more jokes at my expense. No more minimizing. When I mentioned work stress, she listened without comparing it to her own challenges. Different struggles, both valid. I stopped being the family ATM, set boundaries around money. The first time Leah asked for financial help, I said no, kindly but firmly. She accepted it without complaint. A month later, Jason asked if I could co-sign for a loan. I declined. He thanked me for being honest. The boundaries held. Respect grew. Not the performative kind Jason had once demanded for himself, but the quiet kind built through consistent behavior. Emma's dance recital came and went. I attended, sat with my family, clapped enthusiastically. Normal and things. Beautiful in their normalcy. At Thanksgiving, Jason's parents asked about my work. Before I could answer, Jason jumped in, not to explain, not to minimize, but to redirect. You should ask her directly. She can tell you better than I can. Small moment. Significant shift. I talked about my job in general terms. They listened politely. No one asked if it was real military work. No one compared it to Jason's hobby. Just family being interested in family. After dinner, helping with dishes, Leah spoke quietly. Things are better, aren't they? Getting there. Thank you for giving us another chance. You earned it. Both of you. Jason's different now. More himself. Less performing. Good. That's who he should be. And I'm different too. More aware of my own stuff. Less focused on comparing. That's growth, Leah. Real growth. She smiled. Who knew it would take my sister showing up with restricted military equipment to make us face our issues? I laughed. Sometimes truth needs visual aids. Apparently. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Outside, Emma and Jason were playing catch in the yard, both laughing. Normal family scenes, finally uncomplicated by ego and insecurity. I thought about the range day months ago now. The moment I'd opened that case and watched Jason's world shift. I'd worried it was petty, vindictive, cruel. But it wasn't. It was just truth. And truth, delivered clearly, had forced necessary reckonings. Later that evening, driving home, I thought about leadership. About the difference between authority and respect. About how real power was quiet, earned through competence rather than declared through volume. Jason had wanted to give orders in my mother's house. No, wrong story. Jason had wanted to be seen as an operator, a professional, someone who mattered in tactical spaces. But he'd confused the trappings of competence with actual capability. I'd shown him the difference. Not to humiliate him, but to establish truth. And that truth had set multiple people free, Jason from his delusions, Leah from her insecurities, me from the obligation to accept disrespect. My phone buzzed. Text from Hale. How'd the family thing go, ma'am? Better. Much better. Good. You deserve that. I smiled. Deserving had nothing to do with it. I'd simply set boundaries and enforced them. Everything else followed naturally. 6 months later, I received orders for my next assignment, Joint Staff, Pentagon, career-broadening move. High visibility, high stress, high stakes. I called Leah to tell her. That's amazing. Are you excited? Nervous, mostly. Big step. You'll be incredible. You always are. Thanks. Hey, Jason wants to say something. Shuffling sounds. Then Jason's voice. Congratulations, Avery. Really? That's a huge deal. Thanks, Jason. And I just want to say, I'm proud to have you as family. Not because of your rank or your job, but because of who you are. You're principled and strong, and you don't take shit from anyone. That's admirable. I felt unexpected emotion rise. I appreciate that. Also, Emma's asking if Colonel Aunt Avery can teach her to shoot when she's older. I told her I'd ask you. When she's old enough and you both agree, absolutely. Cool. She'll be excited. After we hung up, I sat with that conversation. Jason being genuinely proud without performance. Jason deferring a parenting decision to me with respect. Jason seeing me as a person rather than a symbol. Growth. Real, measurable growth. The Pentagon assignment was everything promised, challenging, exhausting, meaningful. I worked alongside flag officers and senior civilians, navigating bureaucracy and politics while trying to maintain the mission focus that had defined my career. Leah visited once, bringing Emma. We toured monuments, ate overpriced food, laughed at tourist traps. Normal sister things. Emma asked smart questions about my work. Leah took pictures. We made memories uncomplicated by old dynamics. Jason didn't come on that trip. When Leah mentioned it afterward, she explained, he thought it should just be us girls. Didn't want to intrude. That awareness, knowing when to step back, felt like the final piece of Jason's growth. 2 years into the Pentagon assignment, I made Brigadier General. Oh, 7. 1 star. A rank fewer than 2% of officers ever achieve. The promotion ceremony was larger this time. Flag officers from multiple services attended. My previous commanders sent messages. The Secretary of the Air Force administered the oath. And in the third row, my family sat together. Leah, Jason, Emma, now 13 and increasingly interested in service herself. My mother had flown in, tears streaming during the ceremony. Even Jason's parents attended, finally understanding what their son's sister-in-law had accomplished. At the reception, a Marine Corps general approached Jason. "Your family, brother-in-law, sir. You must be proud." "Very much so, sir. She's remarkable." The general nodded. "We tried to steal her for the Corps. Air Force wouldn't let her go." Jason smiled. "They're smart that way, sir." After the general moved on, Jason turned to me. "Did the Marines really try to recruit you?" "Joined assignment 3 years ago. The commanding general liked my work." "Wow. It's not a big deal." "It is, though. You're the kind of leader people want on their team. That's everything." He was right in his way. Being wanted for your competence, respected for your capability, that mattered more than rank or title. Later, during a quiet moment, my mother hugged me tightly. "Your father would be so proud." My father had died when I was 20, before I'd commissioned. He'd never seen me in uniform, never witnessed what I'd built. "I hope so, Mom." "I know so. You became exactly who you were meant to be." Leah joined us, wrapping both of us in a group hug. "My sister, the general. Still can't believe it." "Believe it. You were there for the whole journey. Not always in the way I should have been. But you're here now. That's what matters." Emma approached, eyes wide. "Aunt Avery, someone called you ma'am like 50 times. Is that because you're a general now?" "That's part of it." "Cool. When I join the military, will people call me ma'am?" "If you earn it through hard work and dedication, absolutely." Jason appeared beside his daughter. "And if that's what you want, we'll support you. Whatever path you choose." I saw Leah's surprise at Jason's words. A year ago, he might have steered Emma towards something else, something safer, something that didn't challenge his masculine identity. Now he could support her potential without feeling diminished. The reception wound down. My team departed. My family prepared to leave. Final hugs, promises to stay in touch, normal goodbye rituals. Jason shook my hand formally. "Thank you, Avery." "For what?" "For not giving up on us. For teaching us what respect actually looks like. For being exactly who you are without apology." "I didn't do that for you, Jason." "I know. That's what makes it meaningful." I drove home that night thinking about the range day years ago now. The moment that had forced reckonings, sparked growth, redefined relationships. It had felt petty at the time, maybe even cruel. But it had been necessary. Some lessons can't be taught with words. Some truths need visual aids. Some people need to see the gap between fantasy and reality before they can begin genuine growth. Jason had needed to see real capability to understand his own limitations. Leah had needed to see me valued in my world to stop minimizing me in hers. I had needed to establish boundaries to remember my own worth. The range day hadn't been revenge. It had been truth. And truth, however uncomfortable, had set us all free. Years passed. I continued climbing assignments in joint commands, strategic planning, force development. Each position brought new challenges, new opportunities to lead, new chances to make a difference. My family relationships continued evolving. Leah and I talked weekly, real conversations, sister things, mutual support. Jason became someone I actually enjoyed seeing, his earlier insecurities replaced by genuine confidence in his own lane. Emma applied to the Air Force Academy at 17, earned an appointment, thrived. At Emma's academy graduation 4 years later, I sat with my family as she commissioned as a second lieutenant. The same rank I'd started with 26 years earlier. She looked sharp in her uniform, proud and nervous and ready. Jason leaned over during the ceremony. "Thank you for being her role model. She wouldn't be here without you. She's here because of her own work." "True. But you showed her what was possible. That matters." After the ceremony, Emma found me. "Aunt Avery, they asked if I wanted to request you as my first commander." I said no. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, not because I don't want to work for you, but because I need to make my own path, earn my own reputation. You understand, right?" I smiled. "Completely. That's exactly the right call, Lieutenant." "Thanks. But maybe later in my career, if our paths cross." "I'd be honored." She hugged me tightly. Thank you for showing me what strong leadership looks like. Not just in ceremonies, but in how you handle family, boundaries, respect. All of it. I thought about that later. About how the lessons from the range day had rippled forward, teaching Emma about respect and boundaries and the difference between performance and competence. She'd absorbed those lessons without knowing their origin, built her own foundation on principles I'd fought to establish. Legacy, I realized, wasn't just about military accomplishments. It was about the values you modeled, the truths you defended, the respect you demanded for yourself and others. The range day had been one moment in a long career, but its impact had shaped my family relationships for years afterward, created space for genuine growth, established principles that now guided the next generation. Real capability is quiet. Real experience isn't for show. Respect is earned, not demanded. Some lessons are taught without anger, just truth. Jason had learned. Leah had learned. Emma had learned. And I had learned that sometimes protecting your own dignity means drawing lines others don't want to see. I never regretted opening that deployment case. Never regretted showing Jason the gap between his fantasy and my reality. It had been uncomfortable, awkward, necessary. And it had changed everything. Years later, at my retirement ceremony, 2 stars on my shoulders, 30 years of service behind me, I looked out at the audience. My family sat together, Leah and Jason, still married and stronger for their struggles. Emma, now a captain herself, sharp and capable. My mother, elderly but present. Even Jason's parents, who'd learned to be proud of their son's sister-in-law. The speech was standard: gratitude for opportunities, pride in the mission, appreciation for those who'd served alongside me. But I added something personal at the end. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice or having the most expensive equipment. It's about competence, integrity, and respect for the mission, for your people, and for yourself. Never confuse performance with capability. Never accept disrespect as the price of peace. And never apologize for being exactly who you are. Jason stood with everyone else, applauding. But I saw something in his face: recognition, maybe. Understanding that those words came from somewhere specific, some lesson we'd both learned the hard way. After the ceremony, at the final reception of my career, he approached me one last time. That speech. The part about not confusing performance with capability. You were thinking about the range day, weren't you? Among other things. I still think about that day. How certain I was that I knew what I was talking about. How wrong I was. You learned. That's what matters. I did. And I'm grateful for it, even though it was humiliating at the time. Truth often is. He smiled. You know what the funny thing is? I'm actually a better shooter now than I was back then. Not because I bought better gear, but because I stopped pretending and started actually training with humility. That's growth, Jason. Yeah, took me long enough. We stood together quietly, watching my colleagues and family mingle. Different worlds, finally comfortable in the same space. For what it's worth, Jason said, you were right. About everything. Respect isn't optional. Not from family, not from anyone. No, it's not. And for what it's worth, you have mine. Completely. I looked at him, this man who'd once mocked my pea shooter, who'd spent thousands trying to buy credibility, who'd finally learned that real respect comes from genuine competence and honest humility. I know, I said. And I appreciate it. He nodded and walked away, giving me space to enjoy the final moments of my military career. I stood there thinking about journeys, mine, his, my family's. About how one moment of truth had forced necessary reckonings. About how discomfort had led to growth. About how boundaries, clearly established and firmly maintained, had made space for genuine relationships. The range day hadn't been revenge. It had never been about humiliation or ego. It had been about a simple truth, clearly demonstrated: respect matters. Capability is real. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to accept anything less than you deserve. That lesson had shaped everything that followed. Not just for me, but for everyone involved. And now, 30 years into a career built on those principles, I could retire knowing I'd lived them fully. Real capability is quiet. Real experience isn't for show. Respect is earned, not demanded. Some lessons are taught without anger, just truth. And truth, however uncomfortable, sets everyone free. 15 years after retirement, I woke in my cabin outside Colorado Springs to fresh snow and silence. The kind of quiet you only get at altitude, away from cities and obligations. I'd built this place with my own hands, well, with help from contractors who knew what they were doing, but I'd been present for every decision, every beam, every window placement. It was mine in a way nothing had been during 30 years of temporary duty stations and government quarters. My phone showed 3 messages. Emma, now a lieutenant colonel herself and commanding a squadron overseas. Leah, reminding me about Sunday dinner. And Jason, asking if I wanted to join him at the range this weekend. I smiled at that last one. Jason asking me to the range, not to show off or compete, but because he genuinely enjoyed shooting with me. We developed an easy rhythm over the years, him with his hunting rifle, me with whatever I felt like bringing, both of us focused on marksmanship rather than ego. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. It was comfortable. I texted back, Sunday works. Bring extra ammo. The years since retirement had been different than I'd expected. Quieter, but fuller somehow. I consulted occasionally leadership development, mostly helping organizations build better cultures. I hiked. I read. I reconnected with old teammates, swapping stories that would never appear in any official record. I lived. Leah called mid-morning, her voice bright. You coming to dinner Sunday? Emma's calling in from overseas. Wouldn't miss it. Good. Jason's making that brisket you like. Jason cooking. Another change I wouldn't have predicted 15 years ago. He discovered he actually enjoyed it, found peace in the precise timing and technique. He'd even taken classes, approached it with the same intensity he'd once directed toward tactical gear, but this time with humility and genuine interest in craft. How's he doing? I asked. Really good. He's teaching a hunter safety course now, volunteering at the youth center. Says he likes working with kids, teaching them proper respect for firearms. That's perfect for him. Yeah. He found his lane finally. Took him long enough, but he got there. We talked for a while longer, her job at the hospital, now as a senior administrator, Emma's latest achievements, my plans for the cabin. Sister talk, easy and unforced. Before hanging up, Leah said something that caught me off guard. You know what I realized the other day? That range day, when you showed Jason your kit. That was the best thing that ever happened to our family. How so? It forced all of us to grow up. To face things we'd been avoiding. Jason and his insecurities, me and my jealousy, you and your boundaries. Everything got better after that. It got worse first. True. But the worst part was necessary. Like setting a broken bone, painful but required for proper healing. I thought about that after we hung up. She was right in her way. That moment had fractured something, but the fracture had allowed for better healing. Stronger bonds built on truth rather than comfortable lies. Sunday arrived cold and clear. I drove to Leah and Jason's house, different from the one they'd owned back then, smaller now that Emma was grown, paid off and comfortable. Jason met me at the door, gray in his beard now but fit and relaxed. Avery, come in, it's freezing. Inside smelled like brisket and coffee. Leah was setting up her laptop for Emma's call. We gathered around the screen when it connected, Emma appearing in uniform, tired but smiling. Hey family, she said. Miss you all. We spent an hour catching up. Emma talked about her squadron, the challenges of command, the satisfaction of leading good people, the weight of responsibility. I heard echoes of my own experience in her words, but also her own voice, her own leadership style. She wasn't copying me. She was building on principles I'd modeled, but making them her own. How's your colonel doing? Jason asked. The one you mentioned last month? Emma's expression shifted slightly. He's struggling. Old school guy, doesn't like that I'm younger and female. Keeps undermining me in meetings. How are you handling it? I asked. Professionally. Documenting everything. Building coalition with other commanders. Not engaging with his ego games. Good. That's exactly right. Learned from the best, Emma said, looking at me through the screen. You taught me that respect isn't negotiable, but you don't have to fight every battle. Some people just need to see competence over time. After the call ended, we ate brisket and talked about lighter things. Jason's hunter safety classes. Leah's hospital politics. My latest consulting project. Normal family dinner, comfortable and real. Later, helping with dishes, Jason spoke quietly. Emma told me more about that colonel. Sounds like he's giving her hell. She can handle it. I know. But it made me think about how I used to be. How I undermined you for years without realizing it. Ancient history, Jason. Maybe. But I want you to know I see it clearly now. What I did, why it was wrong, how much damage it caused. And I'm grateful you didn't just write me off. You did the work. That's what mattered. Still, thank you for giving me the chance. Driving home that night, I thought about Emma facing her own undermining colonel. About how she'd internalized lessons about respect and boundaries without needing the dramatic demonstration I'd required. About how growth rippled forward through generations, each person learning from the last, but finding their own path. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. General Timothy? A young woman's voice. Retired, but yes. Ma'am, my name is Captain Sarah Chin. I'm in your niece's squadron. She gave me your number, said I could call if I needed advice. Of course. What's going on? She explained her situation, a senior officer disrespecting her work, questioning her competence, similar to what Emma was dealing with. We talked for 30 minutes, me offering perspective from decades of navigating similar challenges. When we finished, she thanked me profusely. Ma'am, one more thing. Lieutenant Colonel Timothy talks about you a lot. About how you taught her that competence speaks louder than ego, that respect is earned through consistency, that real strength is quiet. Those lessons, they matter to all of us trying to find our way. After hanging up, I sat in my cabin thinking about legacy. Not the official kind, the medals and commendations and promotion ceremonies. But the real kind, principles passed down, values modeled, truths defended that became foundations for others to build on. The range day had been one moment. But its lesson, that respect is non-negotiable, that truth matters more than comfort, that real capability needs no performance, had rippled outward in ways I never anticipated. Emma carried those principles into her command. Her subordinates absorbed them and carried them further. My family rebuilt itself on foundations of genuine respect. Even Jason, once the source of so much tension, had found peace in humility and purpose in service to others. I thought about Jason teaching kids hunter safety, probably telling them the same things he'd learned the hard way. Respect the equipment, know your limitations, never confuse gear with competence. He'd found his way to truth eventually, and now he was passing it forward. The snow fell heavier outside my windows. I built a fire, poured bourbon, settled into my chair with a book I'd been meaning to read. Retirement suited me, not because I'd stopped contributing, but because I'd earned the right to choose how. My phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Thanks for the advice during dinner. And thanks for everything else. Love you. I smiled and typed back, love you too. You're doing great. Trust yourself. Because that was the final lesson, the one I'd learned through decades of service and family struggle and that pivotal moment at a shooting range. Trust yourself. Know your worth. Demand respect. And never, ever apologize for being exactly who you are. The fire crackled. The snow fell. The years stretched behind me, full of challenges met and battles fought and relationships rebuilt on better foundations. And ahead, carried by Emma and others like her, the lessons continued forward. Not my lessons anymore, theirs adapted and evolved and made relevant to new challenges. That was legacy. Not monuments or ceremonies, but principles lived so fully they became part of others' foundations. I raised my glass to the fire, to the years behind and ahead, to family found and respect earned and truth finally, completely told. Real capability is quiet. Real experience isn't for show. Respect is earned, not demanded. Some lessons are taught without anger, just truth. And truth, honored and passed forward, becomes something bigger than any single moment or person. It becomes the way forward for everyone who follows. Thanks for sticking with me through this one. If you've ever had to put someone in their place, not out of ego, but out of necessity, tell me how you handled it. Did they learn from it? Or did they double down? What's the most disrespectful thing someone said to you about your job, your skills, or your worth? And how did you respond? Drop your experience in the comments, hit like if this story resonated, and subscribe if you want more real stories about standing your ground and protecting your peace. I'll see you in the next one.